Welcome everyone, Christine here with the discussion about the High Elf Legendary Lords and their campaign rankings based on your votes. This is not necessarily my opinion. In fact, I do actually disagree with quite a few choices over here. But this is what you guys voted for a variety of reasons. But I think we can all agree, and I'm sure this has been the case since Warhammer 2 came out, that the worst High Elven campaign is Teclis. And honestly, really disappointing. Teclis is one of the major players in the Warhammer Fantasy universe. To see him reduced to what he has been since he was introduced in Warhammer 2 is actually a fairly sad state of affairs in a lot of ways. Let's ignore his faction effects, lord effects, his skill line, or lack thereof in all areas, and let's just focus on something: climate, terrain. See, climate can make or break a campaign. If you have good climate, you have more potential in that campaign, you can do a lot more things, especially in a long campaign. This is particularly important for High Elves, because High Elves, they don't do so great in the early game. They kind of are really boring in the early game, just spamming spearmen and archers, but they excel in the late game. But if you have bad climate, it's not going to be that great. Here's a problem with Teclis. He gets Savannah, which is very rare in the campaign map. He gets Jungle, and he gets Temperate Island. So technically you can get Wolf one, but it doesn't really matter all that much because you start the furthest away from Wolf one. And unlike, say, Imric or Elfarian, who have the ability of either starting in Wolf 1 with the settlement in the case of Elfarian, or confederating a faction for certain in the case of Imric, the best you can do is get vision through one of the quest battles. You get two, but one of the quest battles will give you vision over a portion of Wolf 1. And you might be able to pull off a confederation with, say, Calidor, as an example, if you're lucky. Good luck with that, because it's tricky, and by the way, Calidor doesn't particularly like you all that much. I mean, you can always make it work with High Elves because of their influence system, but still. That's one of the problems. But we have to talk more about climate because it doesn't end there. Oh no, it actually is worse than that. See, Jungle is one of the worst terrain types in the game because it slows you down significantly, right? So you start in the Southlands, it's not quite as bad as Lustria because it's much smaller. So while this will certainly slow you down in terms of your campaign progress, you might think, okay, I can deal with that and then move on to some more interesting stuff. Yeah, you can't, because the entirety of Nehekara is red climate for you. The mountains are yellow. The wasteland is red. So you end up in a campaign where the only option you have available is take the Southlands or not. You could leave it to tic-tac-toe, or go to Lustria. Those are not great campaign choices from a terrain standpoint. Even worse is you start very close to Kairos, who's almost certainly going to declare war on you. And if you leave Kairos to build up, he's going to be a formidable threat. So you actually end up wasting a lot of the early game just traveling across the southern cast wastes, allying freaking Slaanesh of all people, just to sell them the territory, and then you encounter Oxyatl, ally him, he declares war on the Slaaneshi factions, you go along with that. Not the most fun campaign dynamic I've ever had in my life. Also, yeah, you got the Minor Skaven faction and you want to fight them because you can also get some items. Like, you get missions over here for two of his items that are basically beat up scenes, beat up the Skaven. You do get two quest battles, you do get a lot of gold from this, but you're going to be wasting a lot of that gold because to get money from, to get the military alliances and all that, you gotta build barracks here. And even those barracks in red climate, they're gonna cost a lot. So you end up paying a significant price over here for good relations, at least with Oxyatl. That's a problem. Another problem is High Elves rely on trade. Oh yeah, trade. And you have very limited vision on the campaign map initially. You can open it up, sure, there's research and all that, but still. You could consider it a benefit that you do have the ability of recruiting mages in all provinces and hero capacity for mages, but here's the problem with that. You know that High Elf research tree, which is god-awful in many ways? Yeah, it requires you to get the mage building at tier 3 in order to unlock things like precise fletching, which is actually really damn important. So you're gonna still build a archive just to unlock research. So yeah, getting an extra mage early on is nice, but aside of that, not really significant. Faction effect wise, you get recruit rank +5 for lore masters of Hoef, mages, and archmages. The mage one is actually very significant. The archmage one, I mean, you can make an argument that yeah, you get archmages, and funnily enough, archmages are actually better casters than techless. Actually, all mages are better casters than techless. We'll get into that in just a second. But the issue here with that, I have found in my experience with high elves, even though they have a limited hero capacity, that you actually want princes. The dragons they have are better. Their ability of leading an army is significantly better. Their traits, essentially, are better. Like, you can get things like Observant. And you can use the load save character system to get yourself a bunch of princes that have amazing traits. Archmages, on the other hand, even some of the best traits are just not going to compare to that. Like, the insane level of benefits that you get in this campaign, like, yeah, 10% ammunition is significant. 100 experience, very freaking significant. So, it's just, there's no point in recruiting archmages. As for regular mages, yeah, they're, especially in a campaign where you get more mages from the start, and as high elves, you won't necessarily maintain the largest number of armies in the world at the beginning. But here's the thing about mages, because they start at such a high rank, you can get yourself a mage of high magic, or any kind of mage, and they'll do better with techless. Because with techless, even if you want to focus his magic skill line at the detriment of everything else, like Rune Marcher, Inspiring Presence, Bowmaster, which, by the way, you want, when you look at the spells he has 2 spell skill lines. You might think that's great, but in reality, it's pathetic. His special skill line just buffs magic and gives ward saves to mages. That's worth it. But other things just give you various magical benefits. Okay, that's great. That's actually good. Except it only applies to him, so yeah, Gelt is better, by the way. Enormously better. The spells he has, they're not worth it. Like, the only thing that's interesting is Chain Lightning, but honestly, I'd rather not spend skill points. Any magic that you can do with techless, other mages can cast better. And it's like, oh, you got the bounce spell of Firebolt. That is so freaking worthless. One of the last spells I want to cast in a battle is freaking Fireball. Compared to, oh, I don't know, a lot of other damn things like Firing Invocation, for instance, or other more useful spells. And point of fact, I would rather level up the starting Lore Master of Hoeft to get Shem's Burning Gaze, because it's actually more useful. Yeah, even a Lore Master is better than any of the spells that Techless freaking has in himself. Like, okay, he gets the bound Firing Invocation, but it's now worth spending the points to unlock it. What you want to do with Techless is you want to upgrade the Flock of Doom and get that Winds of Magic cast, cost reduction, though even Flock of Doom is not going to be better than your starting Lore Master. Yes, it's pathetic. I guess the one major benefit that he does start with a Lore Master, so you don't need to get to tier 4 to unlock them, but geez, that's questionable. Okay, but what about all the shields, right? You might think, oh, that's great. Not really. Candle Flame, if you have fire magic, sure, but not really. Metal Shifting, are high elves known for their melee skill or range skill? It's range skill. Oh, Rolling Skies, yeah, really good. Melee defense and speed. I mean, the speed is kind of useful, but Smoke and Mirror speed for units when high elves, yeah. Life Bloom is good. Life Leeching is good. Sure. Wild Heart is good. And the last one you get whatever. Exorcism. Let me tell you this. The freaking high elves do not need the leadership benefit in battle. And all you get for spending all of this is Winds of Magic cost minus 20% all spells. Yeah. Horrible skill line. Horrible campaign. Horrible design. Techless represents the worst of the high elves and none of the benefits. One of the chief benefits, actually, of high elves is how unique and interesting their campaigns can be. Techless has nothing interesting going for him, so in point of fact, I would dare say, like, the only thing he has going for him, can get a lot of money that you'll waste through those quest battles. And I say you will waste because cost of going over here. Oh, by the way, fun fact, you can deal with the situation over here with the Invocation of Asia, but yeah, it's not really a great campaign. At number 5, we have Alariel the Radiant, and I gotta admit, I do strongly disagree with this particular choice, because Alariel actually has a lot going for her. I understand that a lot of people do care about the early game. I care about the early game as well, but Alariel's early game is very easy. In fact, it's so damn easy that you can steamroll a lot of the map very quickly in this campaign. Sure, Defender of Wolf 1 is not necessarily the greatest mechanic in the world, especially because if any portion of Wolf 1 is lost, and it can bug out, but if any portion of Wolf 1 is lost or not under High Elven control, you do start getting negatives. And the benefits don't feel that great. However, you do get other significant benefits in this particular campaign. You get more handmaiden capacity for anyone else compared to anyone else because of her faction effects. You get tree spirit units over here, and you do get some right benefits as well. So you get regeneration for dryads, treekin, and treemen units beyond all the other stuff. And you have the invocation of Leaf over here, which honestly, just gonna say it, Alariel is a better caster than Teclis. No joke, she actually is a better caster than Teclis. She may not have the skills that Teclis has, but let's consider her magical skill line. Okay, early on you only get Life Bloom, which is just a heal, but later on you at least get Banishment, which can be useful somewhat as spell, and you do have Earthblood, so yeah, there's some good stuff over here. I vastly prefer Alariel as a caster. You also get a missile string for Sisters of Avalon and Iron Maiden units. Now, Mortal World's Torment just doesn't work that particularly great, but at least you do get the controlled benefit in her province. And on top of that, when you visit settlements in a province, you get influence, control, growth, chance of winds of magic increasing. This is what I mean that, yeah, Alariel is a better caster. She's better in a lot of other respects as well. You can choose Confederation with Illyrian, by the way, or with Safri. So, yeah, you can actually get the Mage Tower of Safri over here faster than Teclis can. Yeah, hilarity ensues over there. But on top of that, you have genuinely one of the most incredible skill lines in the game. It's not Brindle's blue skill line, but it's still actually very, very strong. Because you have two choices, but one is so much better than the other that you effectively have one choice. Blood and Fire is never worth picking up. You could, but you're going to lose a lot. It's also worth pointing out that being able to get Treekin in a High Elven campaign does give you an enormous level of power. Treekin are an absurdly powerful unit, especially when backed by high-end archers, which you do have as the High Elves. It may not be Weight Watchers of the Wood Elves, but let's just say Wood Elves have their own issues. But you get Tradition Dictates, Control, Income, Diplomatic Relations, Construction Costs in Province, Handmaiden recruitment in all provinces, Hero Capacity and Hero Recruit rank for them, and you're basically getting 5 handmaids, because you start one capacity, the one you start with, you get 2 more for faction effects, 2 more for this, 5 handmaidens. That alone is enormous. It's significant. And then you can recruit Sisters of Avalon faster. But on top of all of this, yes, on top of all of that, you can also increase handmaiden capacity and recruit them and Sisters of Avalon at tier 3. This means minor settlements. This means a lot more flexibility, or it just means really tier 3 settlements. This means a lot more flexibility in your campaign in terms of recruitment. This means a lot more capability with these handmaidens, and there's genuinely one of the strongest, if not the strongest hero choice in the game. Because while in combat, their combat ability may not be that great, their campaign ability is unparalleled. They give you replenishment, they give you growth, but crucially, they have one skill line choice. You can go with buffing their combat ability, either range or melee, but you can go with Diplomat of the Everqueen to get discreet. So you get more influence than anyone else. You get trade tariff benefits. You get diplomacy with all factions. You get control in all provinces. And High Elf economy does depend on both trade and control. This is why Alariel is a much better campaign than I think a lot of people give her credit for. Though Queen and the Crone is one of the least favorite DLCs in the game, so that's probably playing a major role in all of that. But yeah, I think Alariel is a pretty good campaign to actually play. And she's really the empire builder of the High Elves. Like, there's campaigns that are better in different ways, more unique units or dragons or, ambushing and all that. But if you're looking to build a world empire, Alarielle is really the best choice from this perspective. Yes, I would even say she's better than Tyrion in quite a few ways. Like, I know Tyrion is a very popular thing, but still. Furthermore, I like to point out that victory conditions, there's many campaigns, including High Elven campaigns, that have horrible victory conditions, but your short campaign victory condition is just basically secure Wolf one, more or less. So that's great. Long campaign, sure, you do have to go after all the Dark Elves, so that's a bloody annoyance, but at least you don't have the Tyrion situation where he has to go after freaking Malekith before he gets that hero capacity. So you have more heroes than anyone else by default, and you get even more heroes because your short campaign victory condition is pretty damn easy to accomplish. Just gain control over all of Wolf 1, more or less. And number 4, it is Alifanar, and I can understand why this campaign isn't ranked higher, because it certainly is a complicated starting position, and the climate isn't necessarily the best, but geez, this guy is the High Elf Rambo on a quest of vengeance to the point that even the dwarves are happy with him. And that's saying a lot. Suffice to say, Alifanar has an amazing campaign from my perspective, though certainly not the campaign that you would want to jump in if you're not an experienced player, because there's a lot of things to manage over here. He has these missions to begin with that can give him significant benefits. The downside is you might have to start the campaign multiple times until you get a set of missions that make sense. So for instance, getting Druki Slayer from an army that starts over here near the Black Forests. How did I get that? Well, I just literally marched towards the Black Forest. So, and then help Sinnelleos defeat that. And you may want to do a bit of friendly fire in that process to make sure Sinnelleos is weakened so you can wipe her out very easily. But getting significant benefits like minus 20% upkeep to all armies, causing fear when fighting against Dark Elves, or just flat out money and influence. Regardless, it is significant power. The missions can be annoying because you do end up getting some of them that are very far away, but the bonuses are incredible in more ways than one. In terms of faction effects, you do get 10% campaign movement range, and you get a global recruitment benefit. But no, those are not just your own, the only faction effects. No. You get 12% missile strength for all armies faction-wide at a cost of -8 diplomatic relations with High Elves, which doesn't matter because a lot of these missions do give you diplomatic relations with the High Elves, so who cares, basically. On top of that, Alifanar did recently get a buff because range combat works better. So he personally used to be pretty useless in battle, but now he's extremely good in battle compared to where he was before. And if you're wondering why Karen Carr is still alive, it's because it's more beneficial in my campaign for them to build up this province before I take it over and also get a lot of money from them. It is complicated because you've got Belagor to the east, who's almost certainly going to attack you. You've got Hellebron to the north, Malekith to the northwest, Sinnelleos to the south, Tarax to the west. Any number of actions that you may have to deal with. So it's very easy to end up losing this campaign. Furthermore, your climate situation just isn't the best. You only have Wasteland and Frozen, so that means you can take all of Nagrand as well as almost all of Norska, though certainly the mountains of Norska are not going to help you in this regard. But still, a good amount of climate lies available in this campaign for you. So you can at least take advantage of that particular situation because of the changes to Norska in terms of the climate with Thrones of Decay. It just ends up working out very well, if you know what you're doing. But at the same time, you certainly have limitations in this campaign compared to others, and it can be a bit of a stressful experience. The first time I played this campaign, let's just say it ended up being a nasty, nasty affair in a lot of ways. But I would recommend it also because every single one of your armies, not just Alifanar's army, has the stock stance from the Skaven and the underway stance as well. So people have described this as the High Elf Skaven campaign. It certainly does feel like the High Elf Skaven campaign in a lot of ways. Great campaign, but I guess a lot of people just don't much care for it. At number 3, it is Prince Emmerich, who certainly is playing a different campaign than the vast majority of other High Elves. His faction effects may not seem all that much until you realize that the faction effects are actually all the dragons he comes across along the way that can give him some fairly sizable benefits in his particular campaign. On top of that, he does get a unique campaign in the sense that he's one of the few that doesn't have to bother about dealing with the Dark Elves. It may have something to do with the end times where he, allied Malekith. Yeah, Emmerich is not exactly the nicest guy to have around. He does get noble recruitment in all provinces and a lot of hero capacity for nobles, and he is extremely powerful in battle if you level him up fully. In point of fact, he's very good against fire damage, so he will just be able to defeat the Chaos Dwarves relatively easily, because, yeah, they have a good amount of fire damage. If you're looking for a campaign to play across the Darklands and the mountains, because both of them are suitable climates in this particular campaign, this is a good choice for you. While certainly not my favorite campaign, I can understand absolutely the appeal of Emmerich. And it has to be said, the Darklands is one of the best areas of the campaign map at the moment. Lots of diversity, lots of possibilities over here, lots of foes to fight, and powerful foes as well. So a great deal of fun to be had from that particular perspective. And I have to say that his campaign in Warhammer 2, be it Vortex or Mortal Empires, was quite miserable. Having to deal with Snitch from the very early game in the Far East was not a fun experience back in Warhammer 2. Also, the lack of trade possibilities when the High Elf economy is so dependent on trade made his campaign quite miserable. But now he's in a much, much better spot. Tricky campaign though, all the same. It's not like it's gonna be an easy ride, but the possibilities certainly are there over here. I can get why people do like this campaign, because if you're looking for a campaign where you're doing something different than just beat up Dark Elves every single time, then yeah, this campaign is appealing to a lot of people from that perspective. Number 2 is Alfarian the Grim. Initially, I was a bit surprised by it, but when I thought about it, yeah, people do want more variety in their campaigns than just fighting Dark Elves all the single time. And that's certainly what you're going to be doing in a campaign as Alfarian. You're going to be fighting other things rather than Dark Elves. You're going to be fighting Scarbrand. Enjoy that particular campaign situation. Though, to be fair, compared to your massive range unit, Scarbrand is just target practice. Though, you can certainly make a pretty powerful army as Alfarian, which is actually unique in a High Elf campaign. You can argue Alariel with her Treekin. Sure, you can. But you can only recruit those from a single settlement, whereas Alfarian can recruit his melee units from a variety of settlements, from pretty much all settlements. And your long campaign victory conditions are beat up the Greenskins and beat up the Skaven, specifically Queek and Ekeclaw. He is on a quest of vengeance, though unlike the Dark Elves, he's focusing his vengeance against the Greenskins. This guy was so formidable in the lore that the Greenskins en masse in the Badlands marched against him to try and obliterate him, and it didn't quite work out for them, suffice to say. Alfarian destroyed so many was that he basically purged the Badlands of a significant portion of them. Whereas Grimgor was fighting in the east, doing his own thing. Now, his faction effects don't seem all that great, though he can certainly recruit very high-ranking spearmen, which is very useful because spearmen, well, they're kind of disposable for the High Elves. And he gets other benefits in his campaign, particular to shielded units, and other melee benefits as well. Not necessarily the best campaign effects, but the campaign effects are related to the dungeons, the cave, the Bat Cave that he has access to. Because he starts with Torivres as a city. You can give it up, but it's kind of not recommended to do so. Here's a problem I personally have with Alfarian's campaign. His campaign is dependent on you capturing prisoners. Okay, what's the problem with that? Well, the problem is that you have a chance to do so and not resolve, but it's a fairly low chance. In fact, it's pretty rare to get a result like that I just did over there. So you end up fighting far more battles manually in this campaign than you otherwise would in any other campaign. You can give up Tour of Rest, though I would firmly not recommend doing so. Because while sure it can give you some money in the short term, in the long term you're going to lose out on the unit capacity increases that you're getting from Tour of Rest. And besides, Grom is right here, so you kind of want to deal with him one way or another. Though not necessarily a big priority over here. He really hates the Greenskin, so enjoy fighting Warzag pretty early on in this campaign. Though it is certainly quite workable if you play your cards correctly in this particular campaign. Now, beyond that, with Elfarian, he also gets the Mists of Tour of Rest, which can give him some very strong defensive benefits. But at least in Ulthuan, but there are certainly some limitations. In terms of climate, he does lack the mountains that Emmerich has, but on the flip side, he gains frozen. So you don't have to play a campaign as Elfarian in just the Badlands or the Darklands. You can go back home and fight against the Dark Elves, which does give you more possibilities than Emmerich has. So I'm guessing that's one of the reasons this campaign got voted higher than Emmerich. Also, it's part of one of the best DLCs according to community votes in the game. It is a bit of a shame that you're going to be playing quite a bit of the early game with just basic archers, because yeah, getting a barracks can be a bit complicated in this campaign, though certainly you can make it work quite well. I'm actually tempted to do another guide. Been a while. Certain lessons have been learned in the meantime with this one. What's great about some of the units he has, like consider Faith Bearers. They're sword units, but they're sword units with frenzy. While they lack armor piercing, they are certainly quite durable enough and can do a decent amount of damage as well. And he also starts with Silvering Guard that are part of his DLC. And he starts with a Lorem Master of OF, so much for Teclis's benefit in starting with one of those, because yeah, Elfarian has that as well. Anything that Teclis can do, Elfarian can do better. Seriously, I'm not even joking on this. He's actually even a better mage than Teclis, because yeah, he can get Fiery Conviction as a proper spell as opposed to a bound spell, and he has the entire melee skill line. I'd probably focus on getting his melee skill tree, because he's pretty decently durable, and he has a lot of flexibility on the battlefield with Stormwing. And yeah, fun fact about Elfarian, although it's not quite stated over here, he does get some nice abilities when he is surrounded by enemies in terms of being able to do damage to them. Though I think that needs a bit of a hotfix by Creative Assembly. They initially buffed it for Under Decay, then they nerfed it just before release, and then yeah, it's not in the best possible position right now. Like, really, High Elves are the kind of race that does need some level of updates one way or another. But I understand, like, the variety you have in this campaign is certainly greater than in many other High Elven campaigns, because you're not just stuck in one geographic area. You can choose where you're going to go, and that makes it better to deal with. And finally, at number 1 is Tyrion. To my surprise, it actually was a lot closer than I would have expected. I expected Tyrion to win, but it was a much closer vote between him, Elfarian, and Emmerich. I guess there's just a lot of people that do want something different. It is a very safe campaign. It is a very good campaign in a lot of ways. He is the generic lord of the High Elves, but he certainly does make it work. Things like global recruitment duration, 1 turn, global recruitment capacity, diplomatic relations with the High Elves, minus 10% upkeep for all armies, or if you want to piss off everyone, you can go with the bloodline of an Aryan, which I would not recommend because Tyrion is already strong enough in combat, so losing 4 control in all your provinces is something I would not recommend. I feel like they do need to rework that because it's a choice, but it's not really a choice, honestly. Like, the one is significantly better than the other. But still, Tyrion does have a good campaign. He is certainly focused on fighting the Dark Elves, but there is a bit of an unfortunate effect over here in that his short campaign victory condition that does require him to beat up both Marathi and Malekith can certainly take a good amount of time to pull off. Though if you rush over there for Nagron, maybe you could pull it off in a relatively timely manner. But yeah, he's just a good lord. He gets a local recruitment duration -1 turn for infantry and cavalry, so he can recruit units faster. He gets that construction time for Shrine of Cain, which is useful considering its uninhabitable climate. That is a bit of a downside, but look, out of all the campaigns that Creative Assembly has ever released, it hasn't changed. This is one of the best ones. Like, there have been so many campaigns over the years that have fallen flat compared to where they were initially or what CA may have designed. Grimgore has obviously stayed relevant throughout all of this, so has Forgrim, but I think, like with Grimgore, you needed a race rework and significant updates to really make that much better. With the Dwarves, again, another rework, whereas High Elves haven't gotten one, and yet Tyrion still remains the best High Elf campaign, or one of the best. I personally do prefer playing Alain of Deathwatch for a variety of reasons, or Alariel, but there's nothing wrong with Tyrion. Like, he works. He just works. And that's not something you can say quite often. Despite the lack of changes, he has been one of the best design campaigns that Creative Assembly ever made that has stayed relevant throughout the years. And that would be all. Let me know what you guys think about all of this. Certainly some surprises. I did expect Alain of Deathwatch to be higher on the list. I'm not surprised by Teclis and Alariel to be certain. But I mean, I guess if people are going to vote Tyrion at the top of the list, it kind of makes sense that Alain of Deathwatch would be voted lower, because ultimately they do have the same objectives. Tyrion just has the entirety of Ulthuan at his disposal. And it's an easier campaign. It's also the only campaign out of the recommended ones that I would say is actually fitting. Like, you get Karl Franz, you get Tyrion, and you get Miao Ying. Miao Ying can work, but honestly, Xiao Ming is a much better campaign. For a beginner player, I'm talking about. Karl Franz, I would not recommend to a beginner player. It can work, don't get me wrong, but it's a more complicated campaign. It's certainly a good campaign, a really good campaign, but yeah, there's a lot of complexities involved in that, which is a bit weird when you think about it. But, I mean, I guess people really like Karl Franz. Regardless, stay tuned for more.